The rain had been falling for hours, steady and cold, painting the streets with silver reflections under the flickering glow of the streetlights. Inside a small convenience store off the highway, Emily wiped down the counter for the last time that night. Her tired eyes mirrored the fatigue of a long day, the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from the work itself, but from life pressing down, quietly but relentlessly. The store was empty, except for a faint country song playing through the old radio behind her. She didn't notice the faint growl of motorcycle engines parked outside earlier that evening, or the group of bikers quietly sitting in the back corner, finishing their coffee before heading out to the road again. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that even the toughest hearts can protect the softest souls, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need hope. Emily worked the night shift at Martin's Quick Stop, a small roadside store that barely saw customers after 10 p.m. But tonight, something felt off. Maybe it was the way the rain hammered against the windows, or the distant rumble of thunder. Maybe it was just her nerves. She was alone, young, and still new to the job. Her mom had fallen sick a few months ago, and the bills were piling up. Emily had taken on double shifts just to keep things afloat. Life wasn't easy, but she believed kindness had a way of coming back around, that somehow, the good she tried to do every day would matter. It was 11:47 p.m. when she flipped the sign on the door to "closed" and began counting the register. The sound of coins clinking in the drawer was oddly comforting. Outside, the rain slowed, and the highway fell silent. Then, suddenly, the doorbell jingled. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked up. 3 men stood at the door, drenched, rough-looking, with grins that didn't reach their eyes. The "closed" sign hung right in front of them, but they didn't care. Emily hesitated, but before she could speak, one of them pushed the door open. The taller one, with a scar running across his cheek, leaned against the counter. "Hey, sweetheart," he sneered. "Don't mind us. We just need a little service." His voice was slick, dangerous, and smelled like trouble. Emily tried to steady her voice, explaining politely that the store was closed, but the men laughed. One of them picked up a candy bar, tore it open, and began eating without paying. The other kicked at the shelf, knocking over a row of bottled sodas. The sound of breaking glass shattered the fragile calm of the night. Emily's hands trembled. Fear crawled up her throat, but she forced a shaky smile. "Please," she said softly. "I'll call the police." That made them laugh harder. The scarred man slammed his fist onto the counter, making her flinch. "Go ahead," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "You think they'll get here before we're done?" Behind them, unnoticed, a chair scraped the floor. The sound was subtle, like a warning whisper. The bikers in the back, who had been silent until now, exchanged looks. They had seen the whole thing unfold, their faces calm but eyes sharp. The leader, a broad man named Mason with a weathered face and kind eyes hidden behind years of hard roads, took a slow sip of his coffee. He set the cup down gently, the ceramic clink cutting through the tension like a blade. Emily stepped back as one of the thugs grabbed her wrist, yanking her forward. "We just want a little fun before we go," he muttered, his breath reeking of alcohol. The fear that Emily had been holding inside finally broke, tears welled in her eyes, her heart hammering. She thought of her mother, weak and asleep at home, waiting for her daughter to return safely. She thought of her late father, who used to tell her, "There's good in this world, Emmy. Even when it hides behind leather and scars." Suddenly, a shadow fell across the counter. The thug turned, and froze. Mason stood there, his towering frame calm but filled with silent authority. Behind him, 2 more bikers stepped forward, their heavy boots echoing on the tile floor. "I think she said the store's closed," Mason said quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, the kind that made even the boldest men hesitate. The room went still. The thugs glanced at each other, unsure. "What's it to you, old man?" the scarred one sneered, but his voice wavered slightly. Mason took one step closer, his gaze unblinking. "It's to me," he said simply. "Because you're in our space now." The tension was suffocating. One of the bikers, a tall man named Jonah, reached over and gently helped Emily step back behind him. His gesture wasn't violent, just protective, like a big brother guarding family. Emily stumbled, her breath trembling, clutching the counter for balance. The leader of the thugs tried to laugh it off, muttering something about not wanting trouble, but Mason didn't move. His presence alone was enough to make them uneasy. He wasn't just a biker, he was a wall between darkness and the girl they tried to break. The smallest thug reached into his pocket, flashing a knife. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. The sound of rain faded, replaced by the thudding heartbeat of fear. Then, without warning, one of the bikers grabbed the man's wrist, twisting it effortlessly. The knife clattered to the ground. The scarred leader lunged forward, but Mason caught him mid-swing, shoving him against the counter. The crash echoed through the store, glass breaking, shelves rattling. But there was no rage in Mason's eyes, only calm, righteous anger, the kind born not from hate, but from an instinct to protect. Within seconds, it was over. The thugs stumbled toward the door, battered but breathing, one of them muttering curses as they fled into the rain. Mason watched until their taillights disappeared into the night. Then he turned toward Emily. She was shaking, clutching her arm. Mason's tone softened immediately. "You okay, miss?" he asked gently. Emily tried to speak but couldn't. Tears spilled down her cheeks, a mix of fear, relief, and disbelief. One of the bikers picked up the scattered items, another righted the fallen display stand. Mason handed her a small paper napkin from the counter. "Don't let people like that make you afraid of kindness," he said quietly. "They don't get to decide what kind of world this is." She looked at him then, really looked. The tattoos, the scars, the heavy leather jacket, all things she once associated with danger, now looked like armor of a different kind. Armor worn by those who still believed in doing right, even when the world didn't expect it. Later, when the police arrived after she finally found the courage to call, the bikers were gone. They hadn't left their names, no demands for thanks, just quiet footprints fading into the wet pavement outside. But they had left behind something else, a lesson Emily would never forget. The next morning, as the first rays of sun touched the glass door, Emily unlocked the store again. The air smelled of rain and new beginnings. On the counter, she found something folded neatly under the register, a crumpled napkin with words scribbled in pen. "Stay strong, kid. The world still got good people." The road nights. She smiled through tears. That night had changed her, not just because she had been saved, but because she had seen proof that kindness wears many faces. Sometimes it rides a motorcycle and speaks in few words. Sometimes it just shows up quietly when you need it most. From that day on, Emily kept that napkin pinned to the notice board behind the counter. Every time she felt afraid or alone, she would glance at it and remember, help can come from the most unexpected places. And maybe, just maybe, she could be that help for someone else someday. Months later, on a quiet evening, a young traveler stopped by the store, drenched in rain just like that night. Emily smiled, offered him a warm cup of coffee, and said softly, "You look like you could use a bit of kindness." Because that's what heroes do, they pass it on. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that kindness can still change the world, even in the smallest moments, please like, share, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps us spread hope and humanity through stories that matter. Before you go, please leave a comment below. Tell us what part of this story moved you most, and whether you believe kindness can truly make a difference in today's world. Because sometimes, all it takes is one small ripple, to change everything. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly returned to its usual rhythm, or at least, it seemed to. But something had shifted inside Emily. The night that once haunted her dreams had become a quiet reminder that even when the world shows you its darkest face, light still finds a way in. Every time the store door chimed, she felt a twinge of alertness, a flicker of old fear, but it no longer controlled her. Instead, it fueled her courage. She began greeting every customer with a kind smile, no matter how tired she was, because she knew what a single act of humanity could mean to someone standing on the edge. Her co-workers noticed the change too. The once shy cashier now carried a quiet confidence, a calm strength that came not from forgetting fear, but from walking through it and surviving. Her boss, Mr. Martin, an old man with a heart softened by years behind the counter, often said, "You've got the heart of a fighter, kid." Emily would just smile and nod, thinking of the napkin pinned on the board, "Stay strong, kid. The world still got good people." But even as life went on, part of Emily couldn't shake the thought of the bikers, the road knights. Who were they? Where did they go? Why did they help a stranger without asking for anything in return? The questions lingered, but the answers didn't matter as much as the lesson they left behind. One chilly autumn evening, about 6 months after the incident, Emily was locking up the store again. The wind howled through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and rain. As she turned the key, headlights flared in the distance. A familiar rumble rolled through the air, low, steady, powerful. Her breath caught in her chest. 3 motorcycles slowed to a stop right outside the store. For a moment, time froze. Then she saw him, Mason, stepping off his bike, the same calm eyes, the same presence that had once stood between her and fear itself. Emily's heart raced, not from fear this time, but from something that felt like overwhelming gratitude. She hurried to open the door, smiling despite the tears that had already begun to form. Mason nodded politely, the corners of his mouth twitching into the faintest smile. "Evening, miss," he said, as if it hadn't been half a year since they'd met. Emily could barely find her voice. "You came back," she whispered. He shrugged, glancing toward the neon sign that flickered above the door. "We were passing through," he said. "Thought we'd stop in for coffee. If you're open." She laughed softly, a sound that carried both relief and warmth. "For you guys," she said, "always." As they sat in the same corner booth as before, the store seemed to glow differently. The air felt lighter, safer. Emily poured coffee for them, her hands steady now, and joined them at the table. Mason noticed the napkin pinned behind the counter, the one they had left. "You kept it," he said quietly. "Of course," Emily replied. "It reminds me that kindness still exists. That people like you exist." Her eyes shimmered as she spoke. "You didn't just protect me that night, you changed how I see the world." Mason looked down, tracing a finger along the rim of his coffee cup. "We all got stories, kid," he said after a moment. "Most of us made mistakes, bad ones. But sometimes, life gives you a chance to make things right. Maybe that was ours." There was a silence, the good kind, the kind that feels like understanding without words. Emily told them how her life had changed since that night. How she'd started volunteering at a local shelter on weekends, helping women who had nowhere to go. How she'd saved enough money to enroll in community college, studying social work. "I guess I just want to do for others what you did for me," she said softly. "Be there when someone needs help." Mason smiled, not with pride, but with the kind of humble satisfaction that comes when a small act of goodness takes root and grows beyond your sight. "That's how it works," he said. "Kindness rides further than we ever know." When it was time for them to leave, Emily followed them outside. The rain had started again, soft and steady. The motorcycles gleamed under the streetlight. Mason pulled a small patch from his jacket pocket, a simple piece of cloth, worn and faded, bearing the emblem of their group, a wheel with wings. He handed it to her. "Keep this," he said. "Not because you owe us anything. But because you earned it." Emily took the patch, her fingers trembling. "What does it mean?" she asked. "It means," Mason said with a gentle smile, "that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about standing tall, even when you're scared. You did that. You're one of us now, whether you ride or not." With that, the bikers started their engines, the roar blending with the rain. Emily watched as their taillights disappeared once more into the night, leaving behind the same quiet peace they had brought months before. She held the patch to her chest, feeling its weight, not heavy, but grounding. A symbol of everything she had learned, everything she had become. That night, after locking the store, Emily sat on the curb under the soft drizzle, the patch still in her hand. The street was empty, but she didn't feel alone. She thought about how life had changed, how a single night of terror had transformed into a lifetime of purpose. That if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that courage and kindness can come from the most unexpected people, please like, share, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Every click, every comment, every share helps us keep telling stories that remind the world that good still exists. The world could be cruel, yes, but it was also filled with unexpected angels. Some wore wings, and some wore leather. And somewhere out there on the open road, the road knights rode on, leaving behind ripples of kindness in their wake, saving lives not with glory or reward, but with quiet, unspoken grace. Emily smiled to herself, whispering into the night, "Thank you." And in the distant rumble of the thunder, she could almost hear Mason's voice replying, "Keep the faith, kid."